The fluorescent lights of the studio trailer hummed, casting a sickly yellow glow on Elvis Presley's face. Outside, the harsh California sun baked the lot, but inside a chill lingered, a familiar coldness that had settled deep in his bones over the past few years. He stared at the script in his hand, a brightly colored page filled with dialogue so utterly meaningless it made his teeth ache. Another song and dance number in a cheesy movie? Another paycheck for the Colonel. Another nail in the coffin of his artistic soul. It was 1965, and Elvis was 29 years old, but he felt 100. The vibrancy that once pulsed through him, the fire that had fueled Heartbreak Hotel and Jailhouse Rock, felt like a distant ember smothered by endless movie contracts and the suffocating grip of Colonel Tom Parker. "It's a real toe tapper, ain't it, Elvis?" Colonel Parker's voice boomed, startling him. The Colonel, a hulking man in a too-tight suit, stood in the doorway, a wide, predatory grin plastered on his face. He held a large, half-eaten hot dog in one hand, grease staining the lapel of his jacket. "The folks are gonna love this one. Classic Elvis, a real moneymaker." Elvis forced a smile that felt like a grimace. "It's something, Colonel. Something indeed. And speaking of something, we've got a real coup for you, boy." Parker waddled over his small eyes, glinting with a self-satisfied glee. "Paramount loves you, Elvis. They want you for 3 more pictures after this one. 3, and they're willing to give us a very handsome advance." Elvis's stomach churned. 3 more. He hadn't even finished this one, a forgettable romp called Paradise Hawaiian Style, and already the next chains were being forged. He thought of the records he should be making, the blues and gospel psalms that stirred his spirit, the raw rock and roll that had made him famous. Instead, he was singing to animated dolphins and chasing bikini-clad girls. "Colonel," Elvis began, his voice flat, "I was thinking maybe after this movie we could focus on music again. A real album, not just soundtracks, and maybe a few live shows. A proper tour. Music, live shows. Now, Elvis, we've talked about this. That's old news. The movies are where the money's clean, easy. No late nights on the road. No fuss. You're a movie star now, son." "But I'm a musician, Colonel. That's what I do," Elvis pleaded, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. "These movies, they're killing me. They're killing the music." Parker scoffed, waving his hot dog dismissively. "Nonsense. You're bigger than ever. People love you, and they love these movies. Just look at the box office. We're rolling in clover. Boy, rolling in clover." He took a loud bite, chewing with an open mouth. "Now, about this next picture, Paramount wants you to shave off your sideburns for the role. Says it'll make you look more wholesome for the family audiences." Elvis stared at him, unable to process what he just heard. Shave his sideburns, his signature, the very symbol of his rebellious cool. This wasn't just about a role. It was about stripping away the last vestiges of who he was, of what he represented. It was Parker's ultimate act of control, his final emasculation. A sudden, unfamiliar heat surged through Elvis. It wasn't anger, not yet, but a strange, terrifying clarity. He saw Parker, not as his manager, but as a parasite sucking the life out of him, turning him into a product, a caricature. Charming Southern gentleman, the benevolent father figure he had once believed in, vanished, replaced by a ruthless carnival. "Parker, shave my sideburns," Elvis repeated, his voice Daner slow. "Ah, just a little trim. Don't you worry, Elvis. It'll grow back. It's for the picture, boy. Big bucks. That was it. The dam broke." All the years of frustration, the artistic suffocation, the feeling of being trapped in a gilded cage, it all erupted. "No," Elvis said, his voice quiet but firm. Parker stopped chewing. "No," Elvis repeated, standing up, the script falling from his lap to the floor, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "No more movies, no more shaves, no more of this, Colonel." Parker's eyes widened, the hot dog for cotton. "I'm talking about me, Colonel," Elvis said, taking a step closer. His blue eyes blazing with the fire. "Parker. Parker, days and year." Parker's jaw dropped, a piece of half-chewed hot dog visible. His face went from stunned disbelief to a grotesque shade of purple. "Fired," Parker stammered, finally finding his voice, which was now a high-pitched squeal. "You can't fire me. I made you, boy. I made you." "You controlled me," Elvis corrected, his voice gaining strength. "You put me in this cage and I'm breaking out. Get out, Colonel. Get out of my trailer. Get out of my life." Parker's mouth worked, but no sound came out. His jowls trembled, his small eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. This was unimaginable. He owned Elvis Presley. He owned him. "You will regret this, Elvis," Parker finally snarled, his voice laced with venom. "You'll be nothing without me. You'll fall flat on your face. I'll make sure no one in this town ever works with you again." Elvis met his gaze, unafraid, maybe, but at least I'll be free. He pointed to the door. "Now, get out." Parker glared for another moment, his face a mask of furious disbelief, then turned and stomped out of the trailer, muttering curses under his breath. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Elvis in a silence that was both terrifying and utterly profoundly liberating. He stood there trembling, the echo of Parker's threats still in the air. He had done it. He had truly done it. The path ahead was unknown, fraught with peril, but for the first time in years, Elvis Presley felt a flicker of hope. Picked up the discarded script, tore it in half, and let the pieces fall to the floor. The news spread like wildfire through Hollywood. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had fired Colonel Tom Parker. For a man who had notoriously kept his star under an iron fist, the news was not just shocking, it was seismic. Producers, studio executives, and record label heads scrambled, their carefully constructed deals and future plans suddenly thrown into chaos. Phone calls flooded Graceland and the rented house Elvis occupied in California, but he answered none of them. Elvis had retreated to his trailer, then to his house, leaving the set in stunned silence. Parker's immediate response had been a flurry of legal threats, phone calls to every major player in the industry, and a campaign to smear Elvis's name. Unprofessional, unstable, ungrateful. These were just some of the whispers Parker tried to spread, but beneath the bluster, there was a deep current of fear. Parker had lost his golden goose, and he knew it. Back at the house, the Memphis Mafia, his loyal entourage of friends and cousins, were in various states of shock and apprehension. Red West, Sonny West, Joe Esposito, they gathered in the living room, their faces etched with concern. "Heard the news, eh?" Joe Esposito asked, cautiously stepping into Elvis's bedroom, where Elvis sat on the edge of his bed, strumming his guitar softly. A melody he hadn't heard in years. Elvis looked up, a ghost of a smile. Touching his lips, a collective sigh of relief, mixed with apprehension, rippled through the room. "Man, he was mad," Sonny said, shaking his head, "threatening to sue you for everything you got, saying he'll blacklist you from Hollywood forever." Elvis nodded, strumming a mournful chord. "Let him. I don't care about Hollywood anymore, not that Hollywood anyway." He looked at his friends, his eyes clearing. "I just want to make music again, real music." The room was silent for a moment. "We're with you. Eh? Whatever you decide, you know that." Elvis's eyes softened. "I do, and I appreciate it more than you know." He felt a lump in his throat. These men, his friends, were his real family. They had been loyal through thick and thin, even when Parker had tried to keep them in line. Over the next few days, Elvis stayed holed up at Graceland, which suddenly felt less like a gilded cage and more like a sanctuary. He spent hours in the music room, his fingers rediscovering forgotten chords, his voice exploring melodies that had been stifled for too long. He played gospel hymns, old blues standards and rock and roll riffs that ignited a spark in his soul. He wasn't thinking about record sales or movie deals. He was just playing for the sheer joy of it. Priscilla, his fiancée, watched him with a mixture of hope and worry. She had seen the toll the movies had taken on him, the way his spirit had dimmed. Now she saw a flicker of the vibrant, passionate man she had fallen in love with. "Are you really sure about this, Elvis?" she asked one evening, sitting beside him as he picked out a slow, soulful tune on his acoustic guitar. He put down the guitar and took her hand. "Priscilla, I haven't been this sure of anything in years. I was dying. Every day. Another movie. Another hollow song. It was killing my soul. I had to do something." Parker controlled everything. The contracts, the tours, the public image. Who will handle all that? Elvis sighed. "I don't know. That's the scary part. It's like stepping off a cliff. But at least it's my cliff. I'd rather fall trying to fly than stay on the ground forever." He paused, then his eyes lit up. "I want to make the best music I've ever made. I want to sing again, really sing with heart and soul. And if people don't like it, if they don't buy it, then at least I'll know I tried." His father, Vernon, ever the cautious one, was also concerned. "Son, that Parker fella, he's got a lot of power. This ain't gonna be easy." "I know, Daddy," Elvis said, pulling him into a hug. "But it wasn't easy before either. It was just a different kind of hard. And this time, I'm in charge." The initial fear and uncertainty began to give way to a quiet determination. He spent hours on the phone, not with lawyers or agents, but with old friends, fellow musicians he respected. He called Scotty Moore, his original guitarist, and they talked for hours about the old days, about the pure, raw energy they once shared. He reached out to some of the blues legends he admired, asking for advice for their perspective on the music business. He started compiling a list of songs, not the usual saccharine movie soundtrack tunes, but powerful ballads, gritty blues numbers, and rousing gospel anthems. He thought about musicians he admired, the session players who had genuine soul. The silence after the storm was not empty. It was a space for reflection, for healing, for the slow, painful process of remembering who Elvis Presley truly was underneath the layers of commercial polish. He felt a deep sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. The future was terrifying. Yes, but for the first time in a long time, it was also his to shape. The king was dead. Long live the artist. And he was ready to rise. The initial rush of freedom began to settle into a daunting reality. Elvis was free, but also adrift. The music industry, accustomed to Parker's iron grip, wasn't sure how to react. Labels were wary. Studios hesitant. Parker's threats of blacklisting were real, and his influence, while perhaps exaggerated, was still formidable. "It's like they're waiting for you to fail," Joe Esposito observed one morning, flipping through a stack of rejection letters from various record labels. "Everyone says you're a hothead, that you're washed up without the Colonel's guidance." Elvis, sitting at his grand piano in the music room, just sighed. He had spent weeks poring over new material, writing, arranging, dreaming. Now, the practicalities of the business were closing in. "I need a manager, Joe," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Someone who believes in the music, not just the money. Someone who's not the Colonel." The Memphis Mafia helped him sift through the countless resumes and proposals that surprisingly still trickled in. Most were from opportunistic types, looking to exploit the situation, or from old school managers who simply wanted to replicate Parker's formula. None felt right. Then one afternoon, an unexpected package arrived. It wasn't a resume, but a small, unassuming demo tape, accompanied by a handwritten letter. The letter was from a woman named Sarah Jenkins. She wasn't a manager in the traditional sense, she explained. She was a music producer, an A&R scout for a small, independent label. and a fierce advocate for artists who had lost their way. She admitted she'd taken a risk, sending it knowing Parker's reputation. But she truly believed in the artists. Elvis Presley. Elvis was intrigued. He put the tape on. It wasn't a demo of her own music, but a carefully curated mix of old blues, soulful gospel, and raw early rock and roll, including some of his own Sun Records tracks. Elvis listened captivated. Her voice was calm, confident, and full of genuine passion. She wasn't just talking about money, she was talking about art. He called the number she'd provided. A few days later, Sarah Jenkins walked into Graceland. She was younger than Elvis expected, perhaps in her late 20s, with bright, intelligent eyes and a quiet intensity. She wasn't dressed in flashy Hollywood attire, but in practical, comfortable clothes. There was no subservience in her demeanor, just a calm respect. "Mr. Presley," she greeted, extending a firm hand. "It's an honor." "Please call me Elvis," he said, feeling a sense of ease he rarely felt with industry people. "And thank you for coming. And for the tape, it meant a lot." They talked for hours. Sarah didn't promise him millions or instant comebacks. She spoke about artistic integrity, about the power of authentic music, about building a career that would last not just for a few more years, but for decades. She wasn't afraid to challenge him gently. "Your early work, Elvis, had a raw energy that connected directly with people's souls," she said, her voice thoughtful. "The movie songs, they're pleasant, but they lack that raw heart. People miss it. You need to get back in the studio, not just to record, but how?" Elvis asked, vulnerability in his voice. "The labels are scared. Parker's got everyone spooked." Sarah smiled, a genuine, encouraging smile. "He doesn't have everyone spooked. My label, True Tone Records, is small, but we believe in artists. We're not afraid of doing things differently. We don't have Parker's muscle, but we have passion, and we have vision." She laid out a plan that was radically different from anything Parker would have conceived. No more movie deals, no more rushed cash in albums. Instead, a focus on recording a powerful, authentic album, taking the time it needed. Then selective, intimate live performances, rebuilding his reputation from the ground up, connecting directly with fans. "It won't be easy, Elvis," she warned. "There will be pushback. People will doubt you. Parker will try to interfere. But if you trust me and if you trust your own incredible talent, we can redefine what it means to be Elvis Presley." Elvis looked at her. Truly, he saw not a shrewd businesswoman, but a kindred spirit, a true believer. He had spent years being told what to do, what to sing, what to be. Now, someone was asking him what he wanted. "I trust you, Sarah," he said, extending his hand. "Let's make some music." A profound sense of excitement bubbled within him. This wasn't just about a new manager. It was about a new beginning. He felt a spark ignite the ember that had been smothered for so long, beginning to glow again. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, he felt like he was walking it with open eyes, and with someone who truly saw him. The studio wasn't a grand, sterile Hollywood space, but a modest, comfortable room in Nashville, full of worn wood and a palpable history of music. "Sarah Jenkins, Elvis," she'd explained. "Just you, your voice, and the music." Elvis stepped into the recording booth, the headphones settling over his ears. He looked out at Sarah, perched on a stool behind the mixing board, her intense gaze fixed on him. Beside her were session musicians. He'd only dreamed of working with blues guitarists with decades of soul in their fingers, gospel singers whose voices could move mountains, a drummer with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. This wasn't a usual set of anonymous studio hacks. These were artists. "All right, Elvis." Sarah's voice came through his headphones, calm and steady. "Let's try Mystery Train again, but this time, don't think about the record, don't think about the audience. Just feel that train rolling. Feel the rhythm in your bones." He took a deep breath. It had been years since he'd been encouraged to feel the music. Parker's sessions were all about efficiency, getting the tracks done quickly, moving on to the next movie song. Here, time was fluid. They'd spent days just jamming, experimenting, talking about influences, rediscovering the joy of sound. He nodded, and the band launched into the familiar intro, but with a new raw energy. Elvis closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. He wasn't just singing the lyrics, he was living them. His voice, once constrained by saccharine movie tunes, now soared raw and powerful, dipping into the bluesy depths, then rising with rock and roll defiance. "Yes, Elvis, that's it." Sarah's voice was full of encouragement, but also a producer's sharp ear. "Let the grit come through. Don't hold back." He didn't. He pushed his voice, pushed his limits. The song ended, and Elvis felt a rush, a tingling sensation he hadn't felt in years. He took off the headphones, grinning. "Man, that felt good," he exhaled. "It sounded even better," Sarah said, a rare, wide smile breaking across her face. That's the Elvis the world needs to hear again. Over the next 2 months, they worked relentlessly. The album, tentatively titled The Memphis Sessions, was a revelation. Blended his rock and roll roots with deep blues, heartfelt gospel, and a touch of the burgeoning R&B sound that was gaining popularity. He recorded songs by artists he admired: Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, and a few soulful original compositions he'd been quietly working on. He even revisited some of his old Sun Records tracks, re-recording them with a maturity and depth that made them feel new again. The atmosphere in the studio was electric. There was no pressure, no shouting, no ego, just a shared love of music. Elvis was involved in every decision from instrumentation to mixing. He was learning, growing, and falling back in love with his craft. News of the sessions began to leak, causing a stir in the industry. Whispers of a new Elvis spread. Parker from afar scoffed and called it a publicity stunt. But even he couldn't completely ignore the buzz. When it came time to find a distributor for the Memphis Sessions, Sarah faced an uphill battle. Major labels were still hesitant, bound by old allegiances to Parker, or simply too conventional to risk a radical new direction for their biggest star. "They want the old Elvis LV," one executive told Sarah bluntly. "The movie star, this is too raw, too different." "That's the point," Sarah countered, unyielding. "He's an artist, not a product. And this is the album that will prove it." Finally, a smaller, forward-thinking label, impressed by the raw power of the tracks and Sarah's fierce conviction, agreed to distribute the Memphis Sessions. It was a gamble for them, but one they believed in. The album dropped in late 1966. The initial reaction was mixed. Some critics, accustomed to the movie soundtracks, were confused, but then the music began to speak for itself. Radio stations, starved for fresh, authentic sounds, started playing the singles. College radio in particular embraced the new Elvis, drawn to the album's gritty realism and emotional depth. Elvis Presley has returned to his roots, and the result is a triumph of artistry over commerce, wrote one influential music critic. "This isn't the Elvis of the movies. This is the Elvis of Sun Records, grown up, deepened by experience, and ready to reclaim his crown." Fans, many of whom had grown tired of the movie formula, were electrified. They heard the passion in his voice, the raw emotion they had missed. Sales steadily climbed. It wasn't an overnight explosion like his early hits, but a slow, steady burn of critical acclaim and genuine fan enthusiasm. Elvis read the reviews, his heart swelling with a gratitude he hadn't felt in years. He had taken a leap of faith, walked away from everything familiar, and it was paying off. He was making music that mattered, music that felt honest. The sound of freedom was sweet, and the world was finally listening. The success of the Memphis Sessions had been a slow burn, but by early 1967, it was undeniable. The album had climbed the charts, not to the #1 spot instantly, but steadily, fueled by word of mouth and critical praise. It was a different kind of success, more meaningful, more rooted in artistic respect. Sarah Jenkins, ever forward-thinking, knew the next step was crucial. "Elvis," she said during one of their strategy meetings. "The fans need to see this new Elvis. They need to feel the music live." Elvis's stomach tightened. Live performances. It had been years. The last time he'd been on a stage, it was for the kind of brief contractual appearance. Parker arranged a quick song, a wave, and off to the next movie set. The idea of a full concert, truly connecting with an audience, both thrilled and terrified him. "Where would we even play, Sarah?" he asked, pacing his living room. "I haven't toured in years, and with Parker still trying to pull strings." "Not the Vegas showrooms, not yet," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with an idea. "Something smaller, more intimate. A place where the music can truly shine. We need to remind people what made you electrifying in the first place." She proposed a series of test performances in smaller theaters, starting in Memphis, then moving to a few key cities like New Orleans and Chicago. No flashy costumes, no large orchestras, just Elvis, a tight band, and the raw power of his voice. It was a daunting prospect, a stripping away of all the manufactured spectacle. Elvis agreed, albeit nervously. He spent weeks rehearsing with his new band, a mix of seasoned session players and some of his old guard like guitarist James Burton, who had joined him in the studio and was thrilled to be part of this new era. The focus was on tight musicianship, improvisational energy, and letting Elvis's voice take center stage. The night of the first show in Memphis arrived. The historic Orpheum Theater was packed, not with the usual celebrity crowd, but with dedicated fans, curious music critics, and even a few of the old rock and roll pioneers who had heard the buzz. Backstage, Elvis was a bundle of nerves. "What if they don't like it, Sarah?" he whispered, running a hand over his slick back hair. "What if they want the old movie Elvis?" "They want you," Elvis, Sarah said, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "The real you. Go out there and sing your heart out." The lights dimmed, a roar went up from the crowd. Elvis took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. He wore a simple black suit, a far cry from the sequined jumpsuits Parker had envisioned. The stage was sparsely decorated, the focus entirely on the musicians. He picked up his acoustic guitar, strummed a few chords, and then his voice, rich and powerful, filled the theater. He started with an old blues number from the Memphis sessions, then palpably transitioned into a raw, reimagined version of Hound Dog. The audience was stunned. This wasn't the Elvis they had seen on screen. This was a primal force, a musical powerhouse. He moved with a restless energy, not the choreographed swagger of his movie roles, but an authentic, unbridled passion. His voice explored every nuance, from a whisper to a soulful shout. Halfway through the set, he put down his guitar and walked to the edge of the stage. "It's been too long," he said, his voice husky. "Too long since I really got to sing for you, and I promise you I'm never gonna stop again." The crowd erupted. They weren't just cheering. They were feeling. They felt the sincerity in his voice, the joy in his performance. He sang gospel songs that brought tears to people's eyes, then launched into rock and roll anthems that made them dance in the aisles. Told stories, laughed, and genuinely connected with every single person in the room. The reviews the next day were rapturous. "Elvis is back and he's more vital than ever," declared a national music magazine. "Forget the movies. This is where he belongs, on stage, raw, authentic, and utterly captivating." Another wrote, "This wasn't a concert, it was a revival. Elvis Presley has reclaimed his throne, not as a king of pop, but as a true artist, a musical force of nature." The smaller venues quickly sold out, demand exploded. Soon they were booking larger theaters and even a few arenas, but Sarah ensured they maintained the intimate music-focused atmosphere. Elvis was exhausted after each show, but it was a good exhaustion, the kind that came from pouring his heart and soul into his art. He felt alive again, truly alive. He had reclaimed the stage, and in doing so, he had reclaimed himself. The king was no longer a movie star. He was a performing artist, a musician, and the stage felt like home. With the success of the Memphis sessions and the triumphant return to live performances, Elvis Presley entered an artistic renaissance unlike anything seen before. He was no longer just an icon. He was a respected musician, a serious artist. The image of the movie star singing to dolphins began to fade, replaced by a grittier, more authentic portrait. Offers from Hollywood still came in, but they were different now. Instead of B-movie musicals, he received scripts for character-driven dramas, psychological thrillers, and even a gritty western that promised genuine acting challenges. Sarah Jenkins, ever his advocate, carefully sifted through them, only presenting roles that would truly stretch his abilities and align with his newfound artistic integrity. Took on a supporting role in a critically acclaimed drama about the civil rights movement, playing a complex, conflicted character. It was a stark departure from anything he'd ever done. The reviews were surprisingly positive, praising his raw talent and understated performance. For the first time, critics acknowledged him as an actor, not just a singing commodity, but music remained his primary focus. He followed the Memphis sessions with From Graceland to the Ryman, a live album recorded during his triumphant return to Nashville's historic Ryman Auditorium, captured the raw energy and heartfelt emotion of his new stage show, becoming a staple for fans and critics alike. He started collaborating with other artists, something Parker would never have allowed. He recorded a powerful duet with B.B. King, blending blues and rock in a way that showcased their mutual respect and incredible talent. He jammed informally with Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, exploring country and folk music that deepened his artistic palette. These collaborations weren't just for commercial gain. They were genuine artistic exchanges, born from mutual admiration. The slicked-back pompadour softened his style, became more rugged yet sophisticated. He still commanded attention, but it was the quiet confidence of an artist, comfortable in his own skin, not the manufactured swagger of a product. He was lean, healthy, and vibrant, the result of a less stressful life and a renewed focus on his well-being at home. Life at Graceland transformed Priscilla and Lisa. Marie saw a happier, more present Elvis. Constant pressure, the endless filming schedules, the feeling of being trapped, all that was gone. He was still busy, but his work was fulfilling. He spent more time with Lisa Marie, reading to her, playing games, just being a father. He and Priscilla's relationship deepened, strengthened by shared struggles and his newfound peace. The constant arguments and the emotional distance that had plagued them in the real timeline were absent. "You're different," Elvis Priscilla told him one evening, watching him play with Lisa Marie in the backyard. He looked up, a soft smile on his face. "Better, I hope. Much better," she confirmed, her eyes shining. "You're home, truly home." His happiness translated into his music. His lyrics became more personal, more introspective. He wasn't just singing about love and heartbreak. He was singing about identity, freedom, and the search for meaning. He recorded an album of gospel music, The Soul's Journey, which became a passion project, touting the profound spiritual depth that had always been a part of him. It won him a Grammy, not for a pop song, but for Best Gospel Performance. A testament to his artistic credibility, the transformation was remarkable. He wasn't just a pop star anymore. He was a cultural force, an artist who commanded respect across genres and generations. He was still Elvis, the king of rock and roll, but it was a crown worn with artistic purpose and genuine joy. His career, once spiraling into irrelevance, was now thriving, a vibrant testament to the power of artistic freedom. And the world watched captivated as Elvis Presley truly became the artist he was always meant to be. By the late 1960s, Elvis Presley was no longer just an American phenomenon. The Memphis sessions and From Graceland to the Ryman had resonated deeply with audiences worldwide, and his re-established live presence had turned heads on an international scale. Sarah Jenkins, seeing the global appetite for authentic music, began planning for a truly expansive international tour, one focused purely on musicality and connection, rather than spectacle. "Europe wants you, Elvis," Sarah told him, pointing to a map dotted with potential venues. "Japan is clamoring. Even Australia. They haven't seen you live in years, not the real you." Elvis felt a familiar thrill mixed with healthy nerves. He hadn't really toured internationally since his early days. And then, only briefly, this was different. This wasn't about quick appearances. It was about bringing his music, his renewed artistic vision to the world. The Global Revival Tour kicked off in London in 1969, not at a massive stadium, but at the legendary Royal Albert Hall. The audience was a mix of original fans, young music enthusiasts, and a new generation of critics eager to witness the transformed artist. He walked onto the stage, a beacon of cool confidence dressed in a sharp, understated suit, his guitar slung low. He opened with a powerful, soulful version of "Suspicious Minds," a song he'd heard and immediately fallen in love with. And his voice soared, full of passion and conviction. The crowd was on its feet from the first note, mesmerized. Throughout the show, he moved effortlessly between raw rock and roll, heartfelt ballads and soulful blues, his voice displaying an astonishing range and depth. He shared stories, laughed, and even sang a few gospel hymns that brought the entire hall to a respectful silence. The European leg of the tour was a triumph. Performed in Paris, Berlin, and Rome, each city greeting him with fervent adoration. Critics lauded his artistic growth, noting his stage presence was more mature, less about overt showmanship, and more about genuine connection. He held press conferences where he spoke openly about his musical inspirations, his journey, and even cautiously about the importance of artistic freedom. During his travels, Elvis became more aware of the world beyond his sheltered Hollywood bubble. He met musicians from different cultures, listened to their stories, and absorbed their influences. In London, he spent an evening jamming with some British blues artists. In Paris, he was captivated by a small jazz club. These experiences further broadened his musical horizons. He also started to speak out, subtly at first, through his music. His album, Universal Sound, released during the tour, featured songs that touched on themes of unity, peace, and understanding, subtly reflecting the social changes sweeping the world. Powerful ballad, Bridge Over Troubled Waters, became an anthem for many, tuning his ability to deliver messages of hope and resilience. Parker would have forbidden any such political or social commentary, fearing it would alienate audiences. But Elvis, now unburdened, felt a responsibility to use his voice for more than just entertainment. This newfound freedom and purpose also had a profound impact on his health. The stress that had plagued him in his previous life, leading to reliance on medication, was significantly reduced. He ate healthier, exercised regularly, and found solace in meditation and spiritual practices. He still enjoyed life's pleasures, but with a balance and moderation he'd never known. He remained lean, energetic, and his eyes held a clear, joyful sparkle. Returning from a triumphant Japanese leg of the tour, Elvis was greeted at the airport by a cheering crowd of fans, but more importantly by Priscilla and a beaming Lisa Marie. Picked up his daughter, holding her close, feeling the profound gratitude for the life he had built. He was no longer just the king of rock and roll who defined a generation. He was an enduring artist, a global voice, using his music to connect with people, to bridge divides, and to inspire. The world recognized him not just for his past, but for his present and his ever-evolving future. His career, once trapped in a gilded cage, had truly become unrecognizable, reaching heights of artistic and personal fulfillment that few could have imagined. As the 1970s dawned, Elvis Presley's career continued its upward evolving trajectory. He wasn't chasing trends. He was setting them, or rather, redefining them, by staying true to his authentic self. The King moniker still clung to him, but it now carried the weight of a serious artist. Not just a pop phenomenon. He released albums with consistent quality, each exploring different facets of his musical interests. Gospel Fire, his follow-up gospel album, cemented his status as a master of the genre. He dabbled in country, releasing From Memphis to Nashville, an album that beautifully fused his rock and roll roots with the storytelling heart of country music. He even experimented with orchestral arrangements on Symphonic Soul, proving his voice could soar over any musical landscape. He maintained artistic control over all his projects, something Parker had never allowed. Sarah Jenkins was his partner in this, guiding him, protecting his creative space, and advocating for his vision. She understood that commercial success would follow artistic integrity, not precede it. Hollywood continued to call, and Elvis selectively answered. He chose roles that challenged him often, in independent films that allowed for more creative freedom. He received critical acclaim for his nuanced performances, shedding the lightweight image of his past movies. He even ventured into producing, forming his own small production company, Presley Arts, to nurture young talent and support projects that genuinely excited him. He wanted to give back to create opportunities for others that he had once been denied. He became a mentor to younger musicians, inviting them to Graceland, to jam, offering advice, and sharing his experiences. He spoke openly about the pitfalls of fame and the importance of staying true to one's art. His humility and generosity endeared him to a new generation of artists who saw him as an elder statesman, not a relic. Graceland itself had transformed. It was no longer a fortress of solitude and escape, but a vibrant home filled with music, laughter, and intellectual curiosity. Priscilla thrived by his side, actively involved in charitable causes and supporting his artistic endeavors. Lisa Marie grew up with a happy present father who encouraged her own creativity and passion for music. Family life was stable, grounded, and full of love. The demons that had haunted the real life, Elvis leading to his untimely demise, simply weren't present in this timeline. The cycles of addiction, the crushing loneliness, the physical deterioration, these were replaced by health, fulfillment, and genuine connections. His relationship with his fans deepened. He often held Q&A sessions during concerts, sharing anecdotes and engaging directly with the audience. He was more accessible, more human. He organized charity concerts, using his platform for good, supporting causes close to his heart. One evening, while looking through old scrapbooks with Priscilla, he came across a faded newspaper clipping from 1965 announcing one of his forgettable movies. He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know," he mused, tracing the headline with his finger, "I often wonder what would have happened if I hadn't fired the colonel that day." Priscilla looked at him, her eyes soft. "I think you know, darling, you were fading. The light was going out." Elvis nodded. "Yeah, I felt it. I was losing myself. But it was so scary to just jump. Best jump I ever made." His legacy, once defined by early raw talent and later commercial exploitation, was now a testament to enduring artistry, evolution, and personal liberation. He wasn't a tragic figure consumed by fame. He was a master of his craft who had taken control of his destiny and forged a path that few artists ever achieve. He was Elvis Presley, the king, yes, but more importantly, he was Elvis Presley, the artist, revered, admired, and truly free. Years turned into decades, and Elvis Presley continued to defy expectations, not just of his career, but of his very existence. He was now in his 50s, then 60s, a living legend who hadn't faded into obscurity or tragedy, but had matured into a revered elder statesman of music. King was still his title, but it was now worn with the comfortable grace of a truly fulfilled monarch. He was still performing, though his tours were less grueling, more selective. His voice, perhaps a little deeper with age, had lost none of its power or emotional resonance. If anything, it had gained a richer texture, a wisdom that only comes from a life well lived. His concerts were sellouts, drawing multiple generations, those who remembered him from the 50s, those who discovered his artistic renaissance in the late 60s and 70s, and young people who were just discovering the depth of his catalog. He recorded new music consistently, never resting on his laurels. His albums continued to push boundaries, exploring blues, gospel, country, and even elements of contemporary rock that suited his evolving style. He wrote more of his own material, reflective and poignant songs that spoke of love, loss, and the beauty of life's journey. His health remained robust. The lifestyle of creative fulfillment, balanced work, and genuine happiness had kept the demons of his real timeline at bay. There were no hidden dependencies, no late-night struggles with insomnia or loneliness. He woke each day with purpose, fueled by his passion for music and his deep love for his family. He still loved a good peanut butter and banana sandwich, but it was a treat, not a crutch. Graceland was truly a home, not a monument to a past life. Priscilla and he had built a life together that was strong and enduring. Lisa Marie, now grown with her own family, frequently visited, bringing her children to experience the magic of their grandfather, not just the legend. Elvis delighted in his grandchildren, teaching them guitar chords, singing lullabies, and sharing stories of his early days, always emphasizing the importance of following your heart. One quiet afternoon, sitting on the porch swing at Graceland, Elvis looked out at the rolling lawns, bathed in the warm golden light of the setting sun. He took a deep breath, the scent of honeysuckle in the air. His old friend Joe Esposito, now gray-haired but still by his side, sat beside him. "Remember that day, Joe?" Elvis asked, his voice soft, a hint of distant memory in his eyes. "When I fired him, Colonel Parker?" Joe chuckled. "Like it was yesterday. He thought you'd gone crazy. That man had you so tied up we all thought you were done for." "I was," Elvis admitted, a profound sense of gratitude in his voice. "I was done for. He was killing me, slow but sure. I felt like a puppet. Every move, every song, every word controlled." He paused, then looked at Joe, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Taking that leap, it was the hardest thing I ever did, and the best." "You did it, E," Joe said, nodding. "You showed 'em all. Showed 'em you were more than just a product. You were the real deal. An artist." Elvis looked down at his hands, hands that had held a guitar for over 60 years, hands that had built a life he never thought possible. There was no bitterness, no regret in his voice when he spoke of Parker. Just a quiet acknowledgement of the past, and a profound appreciation for the path he had chosen. "I wouldn't trade it for anything, Joe," he said, his voice full of peace. "All the struggles, all the doubts it was worth it, every single moment." He was no longer the king burdened by the weight of expectations, but the king unburdened by anything but his own artistic spirit. He had found true freedom, not just in his career, but in his life. He was a man at peace, filled with joy, and radiating a quiet contentment that was more precious than any crown. The year is 2012. Elvis Presley, now a vibrant, clear-eyed 77-year-old, steps onto the stage of the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. It's not a comeback, it's a celebration. He's performing a special benefit concert, a blend of his classic rock and roll, his beloved gospel, and new songs from his latest critically acclaimed album. Soul of a Southern Man, the crowd is a sea of faces spanning generation. Grandparents who saw him live in the 50s sit alongside their grandchildren who grew up listening to his ever-evolving catalog. There are musicians in the audience, renowned artists who credit Elvis with inspiring their own careers. He still possesses that unique charisma, that undeniable presence, but it's tempered with humility and a deep, abiding joy. He's dressed simply in a dark, impeccably tailored suit, his hair still thick with a touch of gray at the temples. He doesn't need flashing lights or elaborate jumpsuits. His voice, rich and resonant, fills the historic hall. He still moves, not with the frenetic energy of youth, but with a fluid, natural grace that speaks of a lifetime spent on stage. Between songs, he shares anecdotes, his voice warm and inviting. He talks about Memphis, about the early days, about the power of music to connect people. He speaks about the importance of artistic freedom, a recurring theme in his later life, a quiet nod to the pivotal decision he made almost 5 decades ago. "You know," he says, a twinkle in his eye, "some folks told me I was crazy back then, said I was throwing it all away, said I'd be nothing without, well, without certain influences." A ripple of understanding laughter goes through the audience. But I had to follow my heart, had to find my own voice. And tonight, he gestures to the cheering crowd, tonight, I know I made the right choice. The roar of applause is deafening. It's not just for the songs, but for the man, for his journey, for the life he built. Lisa Marie, now a successful musician and joker in her own right, watches from the wings, a proud smile on her face. Priscilla sits in the front row, her hand clasped by Vernon, who, though frail, still beams with paternal pride. They have seen the Elvis, who almost was trapped and fading. And they know the miracle of the man he became. Elvis closes the show with a stirring rendition of Amazing Grace, a song that has been a touchstone throughout his career. His voice, full of emotion, fills the room, and for a moment everyone is transported, touched by the sheer beauty and sincerity of his performance. When the final notes fade, he stands at the microphone, a silent smile on his face absorbing the wave of love and admiration. This is his crown, not one of manufactured fame or forced image, but a crown forged in authenticity, artistic courage, and a life lived on his own terms. He had lived, he had thrived, he had created, he had endured. He became an icon who continued to evolve, an artist who inspired a man who found profound peace and happiness. His career was indeed unrecognizable from the one predicted. Had he stayed with Parker, it was richer, deeper, and far more meaningful. Elvis Presley walks off the stage, his hand waving, his heart full. He had chosen the path less traveled, the one fraught with uncertainty. And in doing so, he had truly become the king, not just of rock and roll, but of his own destiny. And in that choice he found not only freedom, but a timeless legacy that would continue to resonate for generations to come.